is at least part of it, that there are certain soils where sandpoint does very well, and a number of soils that are not really conducive to raising sandpoint, but will be better for raising something like alfalfa. So there are areas of the state, I see central Montana loose down grass range, some of that, there's a lot of sandpoint throughout the state, not nearly as much as something like alfalfa.
Okay, I'm told that if you've got a big population of deer and elk in the area, you probably don't want to be growing sandpoint because it's a preferred food for them. Have you had any issues with that?
Well, we personally don't grow sandpoint here for the reason I've spoken, but yeah, that would obviously be an issue, just the same as it is with our alfalfa or with any of our lusher irrigated pastures. And of course, that is an issue. You particularly see it this time of year, fields that you've deferred, set aside for fall grazing, and the question is, do you get your cattle to it for fall grazing before the elk take it all? You know, we've got that alfalfa fields that we normally wean our calves on, and of course, we've had a pretty good population of elk on them already for the last several weeks, and you know that's one of the issues we live with.
Okay, thank you. Switching over to Dave. This is a very excellent question. It came from Rhea. When should they stop watering newly planted trees for the winter?
So you want to make sure that the soil around that root ball is moist before the ground freezes up. And so you probably should back off on the water if you haven't already, to let them harden off, and because most of the deciduous trees, at least, they're going to drop their leaves. You want them to harden, the tissue to harden up, but definitely before the ground starts to freeze, you want to make sure all your trees get a good drink.
Okay. Lori, this is tonight's question, and we had several from last week. We have a grasshopper issue in the state, number one. Everything from pastures to raspberries have been eaten by grasshoppers. This caller would like to know what's the potential for another bad year next year.
It's hard to say, but I think we probably will have another bad grasshopper year. And what happened, I think, and one of the theories is that in 2019, we had a pretty wet spring. A lot of people didn't control for grasshoppers normally, and a lot of populations built up that way. We also had a huge crop of yellow sweet clover, which is preferred by our two-striped grasshopper, which is our most problematic species. And if we have another cold, wet spring, this upcoming spring, then that'll cut down on a lot of the eggs, but we're going to have quite a bit for all the grasshoppers that we have right now. If we're talking about hundreds of eggs that are being laid, so we're probably going to have another bad year. And it is try to think about if you're exposed to grasshoppers and have had, even in the past few years, have had issues. Just think about trying to do some prevention, like some window metal screening. They'll chew through fabric, they'll chew through everything. So you got to do some good screening. And there are several options available, like Nosema is a bait that can be used. It's a fungus. It can get kind of expensive, but they have to ingest the bait in order for it to be effective. And it's the thing with Nolo. There's a brand called Nolo bait. It's the only one available right now, and it could start to get kind of expensive, like I said. And it's good for a long-term management plan. Okay. So it's hard to just think about Nolo bait as the absolute way to go. But there are several chemical options. But when you have the grasshopper infestations that you do in your yards, it's really hard to control them, and you have to think about what you really want to protect.
Okay, thank you. John, did you have a grasshopper problem up in your area this year?
Everything's relative, Jack. I would say no compared to so many areas of the state. We had more grasshoppers than is normal for us. It was not nearly as disastrous as if you get north up in Malta and Glasgow, some of that country, or further down towards Billings and other places.
Okay, thank you. Well, I have you up. This call came in from Belgrade. This individual would like to know what are some of the programs the Montana Stockgrowers Foundation supports for young ranchers that emphasize education and leadership in the state. It's an excellent question.
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to address that. You know, the Stockgrowers are affiliated with the Stockgrowers is the Montana Stockgrowers Foundation, which is a 501c3 that is specifically founded as a nonprofit to promote programs in education, leadership, and conservation. So under conservation, we do things like our Environmental Stewardship Award program and tour, but specific to the youth training, we've done a program in the past, which we are in the process of starting up again, which is our Stockgrower Leadership Series, where we bring in a small group, maybe 10 or 12 people. Usually these are people like 20 to 35 years old that we train on a bunch of leadership things. It involves working at the legislature. It involves public speaking, but a lot of things for the future, how to work within associations and just to be a leader in your community in the future. Another thing that we're very involved with is a program the National Cattlemen's Beef Association puts on, which is the Young Cattlemen's Conference. This is a tour, a week-long tour in the summer throughout the country to get a good view at all aspects of the beef industry, where they look at feedlots, packing plants, cutting plants that produce hamburger for people like McDonald's, things that go on at the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, as well as what goes on with government in Washington, D.C. We send at least one, and if the opportunity provides, we try to send 2 producers to that on a yearly basis. And so as far as leadership, that's the main thing. We also provide our Montana Educational Heritage Scholarship to students that are planning careers in agriculture. So that's a lot of the things the foundation does. That's one of our very key areas is youth education and leadership training.
Excellent. Thanks, Sean. Pat, this person from Manhattan would like to know where they can get more information about Sandpoint. They heard about it tonight. They want to know if there's an extension specialist that could provide some assistance in that area.
We are right now searching for a new forage extension specialist. So hopefully we have somebody on board by next spring. The Montana Experiment Station has put out quite a few publications on Sandpoint. So if you Google Sandpoint, you'll see that show up under Montana Ag Experiment Station.
Okay, thank you. To Dave from Laurel, the bark on this person's quaking aspen is peeling. The question is a tree dying or should she treat it with something?
That is a good question. No, I don't think the tree is dying, but it wouldn't probably hurt to send a photo of the tree, get a close up and send a photo into the diagnostic lab and just have them take a look at it. Aspens, especially in urban situation, aspens suffer from a lot of maladies associated with being, in the lawn and receiving irrigation. And there are some insects that attach it, but yeah, it's probably fine.
Okay, Laura, you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to add it might be sapsucker damage too. So sometimes they're not going after the insects, they're actually going after the sap. And sometimes you could have the bark peel off that way. So that might, starting off with the picture would be great. So diagnostics.montana.edu.
All right. Well, I have you up. This caller from Hot Springs, she's heard that the Asian giant hornet is in Washington. That's been in the paper. Is it going to move into Montana?
Oh, I know that the Montana Department of Agriculture is closely monitoring for the Asian giant hornet. We don't expect it to be, I think it had a lot of hype as far as being in the yard and garden, but if it does make it to we are concerned about it for the honeybee industry for sure, but I know that they had populations that did overwinter in Washington, so that means that they've established, and we don't know if they'll make it here or not. I don't know if David has anything he wants to add to that too. I'm sure he's gotten a lot of questions about that.
No, I really haven't heard too much about it in Montana. That is interesting that it overwintered in Washington, and some bees that are in Montana make their way up through Oregon and Washington after doing almonds in California. So it definitely would be something that the Department of Ag's monitoring for.
All right, thanks, guys. Question from Billings for both Pat and John. This person's heard of the beef checkoff program. They're not sure what it's used for or what it does. Could you explain to this individual what the beef checkoff program is? John, you
Sure,
want to
I'd
start?
be happy to take a stab at that, and I don't know if Pat wants to chime in as well, but the Beef Checkoff program is a program that was established over 40 years ago, where every beef animal sold, $1 is taken from the producer, is deducted from that to go towards funding beef promotion and research. And that is the key thing. It is a program run by producers, by people who are appointed and nominated. Well, they're appointed by the Secretary of Agriculture after being nominated by producer organizations. So it is a producer-driven organization, but it is also it is under the oversight of the United States Department of Agriculture. And the role of the Beef Checkoff is to provide promotion and research, period. It cannot get involved in any kind of lobbying or government influence activities. It's just for promotion and research of beef. We feel it's been an extremely successful program for us. We're currently doing research to see how the producers respond to it and how consumers respond to it consistently, and we're still showing approximately 75% of producers surveyed support the Beef Checkoff program. In the last study done in 2019, it was shown that for every $1 invested in the Beef Checkoff program, we're getting almost $12 in return as far as building demand for beef. So we think that's a pretty good return on our investment. There are currently some things going on with the Beef Checkoff. The act and order that established the checkoff allow for a producer referendum if people want to call for a vote on whether the referendum or whether the checkoff should be continued. They can gather signatures and call for a referendum. That is going on right now. A group has called for a referendum, is attempting to gather signatures. From the Montana Stockgrowers Association perspective, we heartily support their right and their ability to do that. We think that's correct, that producers should have the ability to call for a referendum. Having said that, we think the Beef Checkoff program has been a huge success for us in building demand for our product. So we support it wholeheartedly. So Pat, I don't know if you can add anything or what your thoughts are.
Well, I think probably most people would recognize the classic ad, beef, it's what's for dinner. And very effective promotion. I think it brings that production back down to the community, or that promotional back down to the community level. That is everything from ranchers to feedlots. So it's definitely been effective.
Yeah, if I could actually add on that, that's a great topic you brought up, some of the specific programs. The beef, it's what for dinner is the real known tagline. But of course, the other part of it is research, and it's done some incredible things. One of my favorites that I like is, I've been involved in some research that led to where we are today with some of the genomic testing programs that are out there. And some of that was Checkoff funded early on. Well, not that exactly, because that's more production research, which the Checkoff is more on the product. But what it has done is what we call muscle profiling, where they've looked at different ways to look at an animal's carcass and take to produce different cuts out of that carcass to satisfy more consumers. And that has been really successful in getting some cuts that were underutilized and getting them out for a good consumer experience. So we appreciate that being done.
Thank you, guys. Quick question for Lori, then I've got one here for Pat. This person from Bozeman has hundreds, if not thousands, of tiny brown moths inside her house and on the front porch. Is there a way to control them? Do you have any idea what they are?
Yeah, actually, I think if this is from a couple of weeks ago, I think I might have gotten a call about that, and she ended up sending a picture in. And the moths that, it could be the Montana plume moth, the I don't know if I have the common name correct, but it's a really small moth that when it has its wing spread, it looks very plume-like. She thought they were coming out of, and I'm going to show this too, so it's a good opportunity to show this. This is what we're looking at here is this is the aspen blotch miner, and she thought that the moths were coming out of the leaves here because they are a small moth. But what we found is she had two different issues. She had this leaf miner, and then she also had the Montana plume moth, which seems to be coming out of firewood. So I think that might be one of the moths, but when you that's the one that we had a couple of weeks ago that was just coming out in the dozens.
So a big vacuum sweeper do the job?
A big vacuum sweeper, yeah, yep, and just try not to smash them on the curtains.
Okay, that works. Back to Pat from Bozeman. This person wants to know what's going on with the equine science program at MSU, and particularly the colt starting program. You want to handle that?
Sure. So this is probably one of the first semesters that we actually didn't have the colt starting program, and that's because of change in personnel and the COVID-19. But we are getting set up and running for spring. We have Amy Prechter from Cedar Ridge Equine. She has a local arena here, and not only does she have that business, but she's also a PhD student in a interdisciplinary study. So she's taking on the lead of our colt starting class. So we'll soon be recruiting, but also auditioning students for that program. Amy's working at getting horses lined up. Previously, we've always dealt with donated horses, and we've had in past years a very outstanding colt sale. This year, we might focus more on training, not necessarily just colts. So again, Amy's working on finding donated horses or people that want to participate in the program. Probably if anybody's interested in that, you can reach us at animalrange@montana.edu.
Thanks, Pat.
Jack, can I follow up on that?
Sure.
Pat, along with that, obviously you have facility issues for the equine sciences, horseshoeing, rodeo team, all those things. Can you update us a little bit on where things stand as far as trying to improve the current facilities everyone has to work with?
Oh, that's a good question, John. So there's a couple of things we're doing. We've been working with the foundation on an arena complex that would serve both our academic programs, which includes our equestrian program, colt starting, our equine sciences, but I think it would also serve a wider population. For example, when John Deere Ag Expo is here, Farm Bureau, when we've got kids from all over the state, this would be an outstanding facility for that. We are trying to raise money for that independently through the foundation. Right now it's a little tough. We've got a lot of people interested, but we're still really looking for that one big donor to really help us get it started. The other thing we have is we have been doing some major investments. We've re-roofed Miller Pavilion. We're doing some work. We have a new farrier director, and we're really trying to do some improvements there. So what we're doing now financially is just trying to get caught up with some things that have kind of built up on us that we're trying to maintain and improve.
Okay, thanks, Pat. And you too, John. Back to Dave. This person from Lewistown would like to know if it's too late to prune his trees.
No, it's probably not too late. They're dormant. Sometimes pruning can cause a tree to break dormancy, but I think October's fine. If they want to, they can wait till late spring, March, April, and do it then. It is more convenient for them. then you know it's not going to cause an issue. But
Okay.
if it's a good time for them to prune now, it should be fine.
You're absolutely right. It's a great time to do the pruning. Question for both Pat and John. They would like to know if the Stockgrowers Annual Convention is still scheduled to take place November 16th to 18th in Billings. Can you inform the people on that?
Sure, I can inform what we know as of now, which is absolutely yes. As with everything else in this environment, I guess we'll see where things go. But as of this time, that's exactly right. We are scheduled for November 16th through 18th, and largely the same as what we've done in the past. I say largely because we will have some, in order to do physical distancing, we'll have some space restrictions. So in certain events, we won't be able to have the size of crowds we've had in the past, because obviously we were very concerned about that. So we will be taking every precaution. We were able to have our mid-year meeting this past August, and the same was true with, masks and hand sanitizer and physical distancing. It changed things a little bit, but that was able to take place and went well. So as of this time, November 16th through 18th, that is the schedule.
How many people do you normally have, John, at the Stockgrowers Convention?
Normally, we can have in the 500 to 600 range. We have had as, even significantly more than that, although not just recently. So obviously this year we would expect that number to be down, but even remotely close to that, obviously brings some challenges in physical distancing and how to be safe. So those are issues we're working with our people at the hotel and everywhere where we're going to be meeting to address the safety issues.
Okay, thank you. Lori, caller from Stevensville, says they've lost half their apples and pears to yellow jackets and wasps. Is there something they can treat to prevent this?
Actually, I haven't had that question before. I wonder if there's some sort of wounding that happened before, and maybe it's not totally related to the wasp. They're going after the sugars, so I don't think they'd be the problem for having loss of apples. And did you say pears too?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't really. Yeah.
I've seen that happen after a slight hailstorm. If they had some hail bruising, there must be an odor that's released, and the yellow jackets just migrate to that.
Huh.
So, well, if we find out more information down the line,
Yeah.
we'll provide it.
Yep.
Okay. It's an interesting question for John. This person likes to shop for prime beef, but he's a little taken back by the price of prime beef over choice beef. Number one, they'd like to know who grades this and how it's determined to be prime instead of choice. You want to handle that? And Pat, jump in too.
Sure. Well, I can start. Who grades it is easy. That's the U.S. Department of Agriculture in all plants that are inspected, which is providing this beef. We have the USDA graders, so they're marking this beef as to choice, prime, or other voluntary labels such as certified Angus beef, other things like that, which are at least the choice prime. That's based on maturation, but primarily intramuscular fat. So that's who's determining it, is the USDA graders. Prime is as far as USDA grades, it's kind of the number one product. You can argue, of course, other traits that you like, whether you like the local beef that you know where it comes from, or your grass-fed, anything like that. But just as far as USDA grades, prime is the highest, and so it does bring a pretty good premium. Interestingly, while it is still bringing a premium through primarily genetics, but also the way we finish cattle, we have increased that significantly. If you look back 20, 30 years ago, we'd run 2 or 3% of all cattle harvested would make prime. today that's often running closer to 9 or 10%. On programs like Certified Angus Beef, where we used to run 12, 13%, we're now often running 35%. So we have a lot more of these type of cattle producing this meat out there, but the premiums are still there because that's what a lot of people want.
Okay, thank you. From Dylan, Dave, you can have this one. This person has a 20-year-old rhubarb plant that needs to be divided. How would you go about doing that?
Once again, they could probably do it now. You could do it in the spring before it really gets going. And it's a pretty tough plant. So they should dig it up, and they'll see it'll have this massive crown, and they can just take a sharp knife or even their shovel and chop it up into as many bits as they want, and then spread it around the neighborhood.
Okay. Lori, I've got a question for you. Then I'm going to go back to John and Pat with an interesting question. From Bozeman, every year they see some tiny blue fuzzy aphid-like insects that fly in the fall. Her children are enchanted by that, but are they damaging any of their plants, and what are they? Any clue?
Yeah, I think that it's probably a type of woolly aphid. I think there's some weird common names going around. I think there's one going around called the smoky ash aphid, and I don't know, I haven't been able to tie that to a certain species, but it could be the woolly elm aphid or the woolly apple aphid. They're similarly related species, and they go to a summer host, and then they come back in the fall, and they look like little wasps because they've got, when they're winged, they have four wings, and yeah, they look fuzzy. As far as damage, they overwinter in the roots, so you could see some damage to the roots, but you'll just have to keep an eye on your elm or apple tree, whatever you might have in your yard.
Sounds like their kids are budding entomologists.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Okay, I've got a couple questions here for our animal science experts. From Bozeman, since there was a bottleneck getting beef processed during the COVID epidemic early on, which resulted in low prices for ranchers but high prices for consumers, how can more capacity in processing, especially locally, be promoted such that ranchers get higher prices for their beef? That's a tough one, but have at it, guys.
Jack, one of the things here a couple of months ago when all of this started, got some calls from Montana Farm Bureau asking that very question. And so the Montana University system, I think, has taken pretty rapid action on that there is, for the more local processed beef, we simply don't have the talent in terms of meat cutters, people in that business. And because of Farm Bureaus and other people's concern and support, Miles City Community College right now is starting a meat cutters program. I believe it's a 2-year program in their junior college there.
Okay, John, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I'd love to. That is a great question, and that's absolutely right, because twice in a little over the last 14 months when we've had major disruptions in our industry, which have shown what Temple Grandin said it very well, that when you have a small number of large packers with very large plants, that business is very efficient, but also very fragile. When there was a fire that shut down Tyson's Holcomb plant, that was about 6% of the total processing capacity in the country went down. Then this spring, when the COVID epidemic started invading some of the plants, we also had major disruptions in capacity. So what can we do about it? Well, a lot of things are being done on a small scale. We've just in recent weeks or months had several notices of some plants opening. AgriBeef is planning on opening a second plant in Idaho that'll process approximately 500 head per day. There's another plant being planned in Idaho that will be in that 500 head a day neighborhood. There's a plant in Sydney, Montana, will start processing in November, that they're looking at processing about 500 head a week. There's other plants, including one in southwestern Montana that's at least in the planning stages. Don't know if it'll actually happen, but it's in the planning stages. And with that, there's also these smaller plants, like we have a number of them that may process, 10, 15, 20 head a week. Very, very, very small compared to the majors, but they're just booked. If you want to get meat processed there, you're scheduling 6-8 months out. So we need to get them bigger, and a lot of things are being done there. There's some grants available both within the state of Montana as well as some USDA grants, or at least in legislative stage, to help these people ramp up. And quite a number of things are on the table legislatively to make this more attractive, mostly dealing with meat inspection and how to make it easier for these small plants to get inspected, whether that's getting federal inspection or whether making it easier for state inspected plants to ship their meat across state lines and sell it interstate. So a lot of things going on. One of the most recent is this Price Act, which has recently been introduced, and our Congressman Gianforte is a co-sponsor, which we greatly appreciate because we think that's a good thing to get more of these smaller processors going and able to market more beef.
Okay, thank you. Switching over to Dave, a call from Manhattan. She has several aspen trees. One is turned orange and it has large buds. The other aspens are still green. She wants to know if the orange aspens are still healthy.
Yeah, there's probably some variation, and it depends if all three of them are from the same, if she planted one or if they all are from the same kind of rootstock. There might be something going on. But at this time of year, there's obviously trees where half the trees turned, it's fall colors and the other half still green. So you have to just wait for a few weeks, and I wouldn't be surprised if the other ones will join up and they'll be fine.
Yeah, I agree with you. And why have you up? This person wants to know what they need to do with their iris beds to make them healthy next year.
So the iris beds, I prune all the the foliage back, and what we struggle with iris out at the hort farm, we've got a couple of beds. It's just trying to keep them weed free to reduce the competition. That's a challenge. There's some herbicides out there that kind of help you, but it really is, it definitely is a labor of love as far as hand weeding them. But that's a big one. And then it's been pretty dry. I'd give them one more good drink.
Okay, thank you.
Go into the winter.
All right. We got a couple questions coming up here for Pat and John. Before we get to that, quick one for Lori. They have grubs in the lawn that eat the roots and cause brown spots. Any idea what that is?
Well, it could be, I guess it depends. It could be, if they haven't seen the grubs, it could be anything. But yeah, it could be May June beetles, and depending, where's the caller from?
That one came from Helena.
From Helena, okay. Yeah, bill bug damage, I think we usually see more so in the spring. But it depends on what the grubs look like. If they're kind of larger grubs and white grubs, those are probably could be May June beetles. And in Helena, I don't think we have the Japanese beetle yet.
No.
But so if you have the grubs, you can send me a picture, or if you don't see the grubs there, it could be a cultural issue, could be a lot of different things.
All right. Thank you. A local question here from Bozeman. Where should a person go to find out more about supporting small meat processing, especially the available grants? Pat, John, you want to handle that, please?
Pat, why don't you take a stab at that? I'll see.
Oh, grants to support. Boy, that's a tough one. I think, wow, I'm not sure that I can do a very good job answering that. There are some federally sponsored grants that are partnership grants between producers and academics. don't know that I could really tell you where to start searching for that. Probably a good place to start, at least on campus, would be Dr. Jane Ann Bowles, our meat scientist here, would be a good person to reach out to.
Okay, thank you.
I would also, I can't expand on that too much, but some of the grants I believe are available through the Montana Small Business Administration and also the Montana Manufacturing Center there in Bozeman. I don't know that they have grants available, but they have expertise and could certainly point people in the right direction.
Okay,
That's a good point, John. I've actually reviewed a few small business proposals, and that would be a good fit.
okay, thank you. Lori, I see that piece of firewood over there. I'll get back to you in a minute, John. I got another question, but I want to find out what's wrong with this piece of firewood.
Yeah, so what we have here is this is a piece of green ash, and we've had this pest for several years now. This is damaged. You could see some of the ventilation holes that are going around, that go around in a horizontal position here, and then you also see some exit holes. This is from the ash bark beetle. And it is just, we've had a year of really heavy damage from this pest. And our ash have been hit pretty hard by winter kill. And this is, like I said, this is a pest that we've had for several years, but the damage has just been unprecedented. We've had major damage from, we've had woodpeckers also going after the larvae underneath the wood there. And so it's actually stripped a lot of the trees, and it's really been a damaging year.
You know, the ash I always thought was pretty indestructible, but the last year has really been tough.
Really tough for ash.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it has
some of them
been.
didn't even leaf out at all.
That's true.
Yep.
John, you had another comment, but you can add to that, but I'm also going to ask you this question. This person from Willow Creek says that they're seeing a lot more corn growing all over the state of Montana. Does that mean there's more cattle in Montana than there used to be?
Interesting question, and Pat might add to that, but I don't know that that's the case, but a lot of that, of course, does come back to genetics, that with different plant varieties that can grow with a shorter growing season, we can grow corn in places that was unheard of 20 years ago. So that is correct, that more corn is being grown in Montana. I don't know that that leads to more cattle, but it does facilitate cattle feeding, and which ties right into the possibility of expanding some of these, even if we don't have major processing plants in Montana, expanding some of the smaller ones, because Montana's feeding cattle in Montana is absolutely doable. We're very competitive at feeding cattle. The problem with feeding cattle in Montana in the past has been marketing, when you have to go hundreds of miles to your customers. But with more corn varieties grown here, it makes cattle feeding even that much more attractive.
Well,
Hey, John, could you give a city slicker a 60-second rundown of how the beef industry works in Montana? I mean, we go out and we see calves born in the spring, usually. How long does the rancher hold on to that? Where do they sell that? I mean, what's kind of a highly generalized production cycle for a stock grower?
Sure, Dave, and I will give you the highly generalized version you asked for, because there's 1,000,001 different ways. But yeah, in a state like Montana, we're known for our great seed stock genetics. Some of the greatest purebred cattle in the world come from Montana. And so we're a cow-calf state. Because of what was mentioned, traditionally, we're not a huge corn growing state. That means we're not traditionally a great cattle feeding state, but that is changing to some degree. But yeah, generally these cow-calf producers have the calves born on their place, run them on their mothers for maybe 7 months, and that's a number that can vary greatly. And then they go to be fed where it's cheaper to raise the corn. Where I live, we're over a mile high. It's just not efficient country to be raising a lot of crops for finishing cattle. So we ship our cattle elsewhere to where the feed is. It's cheaper to ship the cattle to the feed than vice versa. And then the packing capacity is a little bit the same. It's good to have the packing capacity where the feed is and closer to the end consumer. So on a large scale, that happens more in Nebraska, Kansas, Texas, Iowa. So a lot of cattle from this country leave Montana as calves and go to those other states, Colorado, Nebraska, Kansas, to be finished there. And then of course the meat goes everywhere from there, including back here. So that's the real nutshell. And Pat, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, I think one thing, cattle numbers may not be going up, but beef production, pounds of meat coming out of Montana, has increased. Weaning weights have increased. We're starting to see a lot of producers, and actually Montana State, we're doing this now too. We're setting our calving season back, trying to reduce our harvested feed inputs. That's probably where producers can do the best to make money. You know, you certainly want to have the right genetics, but one of the things the cattle and the sheep industry always face is, you know, you need that genetics for the final product, but you also want the right genetics for that mother cow that's out there, and you'd like her to kind of be cheap as possible. And so we're starting to see some people that are running probably more cow-calf and stocker operations where they have that flexibility without impacting their cow herd number to respond to droughts, to good rain years, and things along that line. And, you know, the whole point about corn is interesting. You used to see corn that's really kind of come up the Yellowstone Valley over the years. And John is right. If you look back in the day when there was Midland Pack and Pierce Packing and Billings, there was quite a few more feedlots in this country. And the Canadians proved that you can do it in this environment. And corn is a great feed. It's a very consistent feed, but there's a lot of cattle, a lot of sheep that have the potential to be finished on barley, something that we grow a lot of here in this state.
Okay, thank you. We did have a term, our caller from Glendive has heard the term backgrounding. Quickly, what is backgrounding?
Again, backgrounding can be a lot of different things, but generally what that's referred to is once you've taken the calves off the cows and you're feeding them, but it's usually the smaller calf that you're growing out more rather than finishing them to where they're fed and moved on to the final processor. So backgrounding can quite often be taking a calf that weighs anywhere from 400 to 700 pounds and feeding it up to 700 to 900 pounds, and then moving it on to a different lot to be finished as fed meat.
Okay, thank you. Dave, quick one here from Dylan. How would this person winterize a climbing rose?
So if it's a hardy rose, they probably could, this would be a good time if they wanted to train it, to prune it back, that would be fine. If they don't have dependable snow cover, they might think about putting some mulch around the base just to help protect the roots.
Okay, thank you.
But,
you got more?
nope.
All right. Lori, Jason from Three Forks has thousands of black bugs on the side of the house. What are they, and what should he do about it?
That could be several different things, but one thing that we've had the last couple months, we've had a really bad false chinch bug year. So we've had the smaller stage, or the immature stage, we call nymphs, and people that have been surrounded by canola fields or after the crop's been harvested, they've had a lot of false chinch bugs coming into the side of their house, on the side of their house, and coming into the home too. And they like to feed on weeds in the mustard family, and but they usually should be around for only a week or so. So definitely get the shop vac out, and there are some, you could try some insecticides as kind of a perimeter sprays, but they don't respond very well to insecticides, and you have to make sure you follow the label so you're not putting the insecticide on every day.
Okay.
Yep.
Why have you up? Show us your pet.
I'll show you my pet, yeah. So I was kind of excited to come in today.
Entomologists are a little weird with pets.
Yeah, so this right here is what we call a vinegaroon. And she is, we don't have these here in Montana, but I've got her from Arizona, and she doesn't have any venom. She doesn't see very well. She's probably about 4 to 5 years old, and she's called a vinegaroon because she shoots out acetic acid from her tail, which is used to kill insects, and that's what she feeds on, is insects and a lot of different other prey. And she's very easy to keep as a pet if you're interested in having one. And she's just been a wonderful pet to have, and she's been walking around a lot, so I think she wanted to be on TV today.
What's its name?
No name, yeah.
Okay, well, that isn't so bad then. Caller from Belgrade, John, what does the Montana Stockgrowers Advocacy Fund support?
The Montana Stockgrowers Advocacy Fund supports just what it says, advocacy, in the sense of those are basically political activities, which of course is kept very separate from, there was a caller earlier asking about the foundation, which is a 501c3 and absolutely does not go near any kind of advocacy type issues. So advocacy, what that is essentially our efforts during the legislature, working with the legislature, testifying on bills, that type of thing, as well as working throughout the year. We work very closely with a number of different agencies in Helena, with the Department of Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, the Department of Natural Resources and Conservation, obviously the Department of Ag, and the Department of Livestock. So advocacy is building our relationship with those type of people.
Okay, good answer. Thank you. Quick one for you, Dave, from Belt. Can you use treated wood to build raised garden beds?
Yeah, it's fine. The materials don't leach out very far, if at all. And if you want to use that, that's fine. We've had untreated just pine boards at the Hort Farm last over a decade in a raised bed situation. So it's your choice.
Okay.
But there's little concern for that.
And while I have you up, all the suckers or little runners on strawberries, do they need to be pruned off, cut off now, or should you still water them and hope they take?
I think make sure they go into the winter with adequate soil moisture. If you don't have good snow cover, you might think about some mulching or covering with a row cover. It would increase the winter survival, and they're fine.
Okay. Pat from Galton Gateway. This person would like to know why there was no horseshoeing school this year, and what's the future plans for horseshoeing schools at Montana State University.
So Bryce Kawasaki, who ran our farrier program for a number of years, did a great job. He last year moved to North Dakota. We did a search, it was unsuccessful, but here this summer we were able to hire Diego Almeida. He comes to us from the University of Illinois Vet School. He was the farrier. So Diego is starting a new program. We're real excited about that. Right now, I think his first class will be in February. We already have 30 students wanting to be on the waiting list for that. So Montana's had at the Horseshoeing School since 1975. To my knowledge, this last year was the first year that we haven't had the school, but we have a strong commitment to that, and we will be moving forward with our farrier program.
Thank you. We're getting down on time. Lori, short answer if you can. From Bozeman, this person has a log cabin with carpenter ants. How can they get rid of them and protect the cabin from that?
Carpenter ants could be a little bit tricky. You could start off with some baits, and the bait stations that you could get at a hardware store, sometimes they don't pick those up very often. I would check around for leaks to see where the leaks might be around the house, or where they might be coming from. And they're a little bit difficult because they form satellite populations. So I would start off with the baits and then go from there.
Okay, thank you. Pat, you got about 15 seconds to answer this question. Have the teaching methods at the animal science changed with the COVID-19?
We've certainly had to reduce our class sizes. We are doing some blended. Our upper division classes are still predominantly face-to-face, but I think really the thing that that we've done a really good job at is, for example, our Montana Plant Lab class. We still do that in person. We have 11 labs that run weekly, each with 20 to 23 students. Our animal science feeding, 5 labs a week, 20 students, still face-to-face.
All right, thank you. John, thanks for joining us tonight. Pat, the rest of you, we had a great time. Lots of nice questions. We'll be back next week with the Wool Growers Association, the oldest association in the state. Have a good night. Stay safe.
For more information and resources, visit montanapbs.org/aglive. Montana Ag Live is made possible by the Montana Department of Agriculture, the MSU Extension Service, the MSU Ag Experiment Stations of the College